Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The Bee Gees. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? And this is a new documentary that premiered on HBO and tells the story of the legendary musical act and musicians and songwriters, the Gibbs, the Bee Gees. And I myself personally am a humongous fan of the Bee Gees. I love disco and I love Motown and I just love music from the 70s. And there's very few bands that really encompass and define what 70s music was than the Bee Gees. And it's very interesting because the Bee Gees were more of a fluid kind of act where they didn't just stick with the same kind of music. They had eras and phases in their career that helped them stick around, stay alive. And Frank Marshall's documentary here does such an amazing job of portraying that progression, that staying power, and that influence. And this film avoids one of the common rock doc kinds of pitfalls where it's just like either somebody involved is like perfectly good, nothing was wrong with them, and everybody else caused the problems, or this band was perfect, they didn't do anything, and everything was la-ti-da perfect. They showed the chinks in the armor, they showed the more uncomfortable sides of the Gibb family. And it was very interesting how, because you have Barry Gibb, who's still alive, and being very honest about his experiences and his relationship with his two brothers, Morris and Robin. And you have these archival footage interviews with Morris and Robin, and you really get a wide perspective on the dynamics. And it was very interesting, and I can relate with the monkey in the middle kind of role that Morris had in terms of the tensions that went between Robin and Barry. And then you have those moments talking about their younger brother Andy and how they all fit together into this dynamic. And it's very interesting because there was tension, there was ego between Barry and Robin, and this film captures that. And it shows these men being very honest about that. And that's meaningful and it's powerful in the way that it captured their rise, their falls, their rises again, and throughout their careers and their relationships. There are some moments towards the end where I feel like they truncated some of the more heavy emotional times, especially towards the ends of Morris. Well, first Andy's untimely death at the age of 30, and then Morris and Robin in the 2000s. They kind of truncated that into like, here's some text. But they do really dig deep through the progression of their musical career and do capture those dynamics. And it's an interesting dynamic. And they're also an intriguing band as they started very much feeling like a Beatles type band or one of those, the rest of the British Invasion kinds of groups, and this softer kind of rock. And it's so impressive how they show the progression and the kind of development of the Bee Gees sound and them discovering that and that creative process, and they capture that creative process in an engaging and relatable kind of way. This isn't like a distant artist trying to explain things to you, but you really get a sense of what their process was and how they were able to create this, and capturing the skyrocketing success of their new sound that really defined disco music, centered around Saturday Night Fever with Staying Alive, and just them incorporating the music into this. They had live performances and them recording, and just the music came alive in this documentary and really captured the energy of this group. And you sit here in awe of this group throughout their early years, their first peak, and then their monster peak in the mid to late 70s, and the horrible kinds of societal shifts that caused them to fall off. and then their lasting impressions and how they started getting the songwriting and working with the likes of just Barbra Streisand and Diana Ross and Celine Dion, and just all these different times, and really proving why the Bee Gees are one of the greatest acts of all time and some amazing artists, and who had quite a unique relationship, being brothers trying to run this band. And you have perspectives of other musical artists. You have Mark Ronson, you have Justin Timberlake, you have Nick Jonas, which is interesting because he understands that dynamic of having a band with your brothers, your actual brothers, and not just like you feel like a family. And in the end, the Bee Gees' How to Mend a Broken Heart is a really impressive, moving, intriguing, and powerful documentary that is able to capture the spirit and the energy of this creative machine that has this lasting powers where a 29-year-old in 2020 can probably name 20 different songs by the Bee Gees and will sing along to every single one of them. And that's the power of this documentary. And it's definitely worth checking out on HBO. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the Bee Gees' How to Mend a Broken Heart. And let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.